Chapter 5. I was a poor, helpless, miserable wretch. I knew and could distinguish nothing, but feeling pain invade me on all sides. Soon a gentle light stole over the heavens and gave me a sensation of pleasure. I started up and beheld a radiant form. Light flooding, so painful, a gasp, a dog barking. Dark. In the distance, Justine heard what sounded like a dog's nails tapping against a marble floor, a brassy clatter of curtain rings. Light. Gradually, Justine's eyes focused. She was in a bed, a grand four-posted bed hung with thick bed curtains the hue of an egg yolk, a plush eiderdown beneath her bones. Lying next to her, a woman with long curls spun with gold. Though the woman's face was turned, Justine knew the curls belonged to Elizabeth Lavenza. Only Elizabeth possessed such radiant hair. In that grand curtained bed beside Elizabeth, Justine's eyelids were heavy, so heavy. She let them close, but darkness did not return. Instead, she saw the hangman before he'd set the rope about her neck, before all had turned black in a rush of guilt and memory. Then, awakening inside the coffin, Elizabeth's bright face like the moon, the lush red rose in her hand. Justine couldn't recall what happened next. It doesn't matter. I am here now. As for now, her neck ached. Oh, how it ached. She wiggled her fingers, straining to lift a hand. She touched her throat. Swollen. Bruises. They were raised across her neck. It was a miracle she could breathe. Next, her head, her skull. The crown of it was coated with bristles like a man's beard, scabbed and scarred. They shaved my hair before they hanged me. At last, Justine remembered it all. She recalled watching her silvery blonde hair spill along the straw-covered floor, that same silvery hair Ernest would twine his hands in when they coupled, as though to keep from drowning in pleasure. The hair he claimed to be more beautiful than moonlight. Though she'd steeled herself for the loss of it, she'd still wept. "Vanity has no place here," the priest had admonished before he'd forced her to admit murdering William. "Vanity will not save your soul." She remembered that desperate confession she'd whispered in her cell, the walk to the scaffold. Justine's hand fell from her scalp. "Father, Son, Holy Spirit, the resurrection and the glory." Christ had returned from death. So had she, or so it seemed. Whatever had happened, she was alive, or had returned to life anew. How could this be? How was her neck not broken? Was this a dream? I'm alive. Justine? Are you awake? No dream. Elizabeth's voice. The Frankenstein's ward curled about Justine's body, heart speeding against Justine's spine. She was afraid. So was Justine. More urgently, "Justine, can you hear me?" Justine met Elizabeth's eyes. "We're at the Villa Lavenza," Elizabeth explained in a low voice. "My family home in Lake Como. I brought you here. This is where we've been traveling to these past 3 days. I dressed you in men's clothing so no one would recognize you. Do you remember?" "No," Justine tried to say. Her vocal cords refused to obey. "I found you alive inside your coffin. Do you remember?" The moon. Elizabeth. The rose. She tried to nod, but it was too painful. Her neck. How ragged her breath sounded. "Is that a yes? Can you blink? Blink once if so, twice if no." Justine managed to blink once. "You can't speak?" 2 blinks. "But you can hear me?" A solitary blink. "Listen to me, and listen closely," Elizabeth whispered furiously. "I doubt anyone will bother us here, but it's best you remain in this room. If you're discovered alive, they'll hang you again, and this time they'll make sure you die. Do you understand?" Justine blinked once. Yes. Elizabeth had saved her. Elizabeth had run away with her. Never in all her life would she have considered Elizabeth capable of such actions. Elizabeth was the most obedient person she knew. Perfect. I'm the only person who knows you survived. I didn't dare tell anyone, not even Henry or Victor. It's our secret, Elizabeth continued. I still don't know how you survived the hanging. The noose must not have broken your neck, though God knows how. I think the rope must have been wet. You were too light. It's a miracle I looked inside your coffin before we left to bury you. Once I realized you still lived, I fled with you, kept you sedated along the way. Well, I hired a coachman to bring us here, but worry not, I paid him well. No matter. You're alive. I live. Something electric rose up Justine's spine, something sharp and bright and life-giving. Her arms and legs jolted out, thrashing, turning, reminding her of that time with Dr. Galvani, the surge of energy rushing through the room. It all came back, everything that had happened after her hanging. She recalled Henry Clerval's voice, awakening inside the coffin, Elizabeth's face, the rose, Elizabeth carrying her from the coffin to a carriage, jostling over cobblestones, flashes of light, broth drizzled between her lips for nourishment, laudanum to keep her silent. Then Justine remembered. William, dead. There is evil in this world, an evil I cannot fathom, and yet I live. Was it joy she felt at her resurrection, or terror? A shrill sound, louder than she'd ever imagined, rang through her, though it refused to leave her mouth. The scream was coming from within her, from her throat, her stomach, her heart. Another rush of electricity up her spine. She tried to throw herself onto her knees, pray. She had to pray. Why had she lived, but William not? How could God spare her, but not an innocent child? She shook as she fell from the bed. Joy, terror, evil, good, a whirling cycle of life and death, leaving her caught in its midst. What is it? Elizabeth threw her arms about Justine as she shook. Here, let me help you. I could read your lips. Can you move them? William, Justine mouthed, her lips moving at last. The air surrounding her turned dense and buzzing and dark. The taste of laudanum, like licorice. Justine next recalled a savoury aroma. Hours must have passed, for the sun was high. She found a meal set beside her on the nightstand, a hunk of coarse black bread and broth sheening with fat, fare suitable for invalids or uncomplaining servants. Her head spun from all the laudanum. Any food would surely come up. Yet her stomach growled. She felt a slave to her body's ravenous needs. I'm alive, she thought again. What a wonder this was. The door to the bedroom opened abruptly. Ah, you're awake. Elizabeth slid into the room. She was dressed in a cerulean blue high-waisted redingote she favoured. The dog followed, his sleek fur the colour of amber. He jumped on the bed near Justine's feet, jostling her sore body. Elizabeth bolted the door and perched on the bed. You look better. I'm glad you slept. I told Signora Julia, that's the housekeeper, you had a fever. That way they won't come upstairs. They? How many were at the villa? Would they betray them? Don't look so alarmed, Elizabeth said. Only 3 servants. Besides Signora Julia, there's the gardener, Martin, and a maid named Ella. I dismissed the other maid, who was homesick anyway. I told them you're my invalid cousin from Strasbourg, a student. We won't stay here forever. Long enough for you to recover. After that, I'm uncertain. Her voice broke. They somehow learned about William. I suppose the news travelled. They believe I came here with you to mourn him. Justine's hands curled over her eyes. Do you think you can eat? She let her hands drop. 2 blinks. No. Are you steady on your feet? A slight shrug. I don't know. Come, let's get you walking. We'll sit by the window. The air will clear your head. I'll help you. Justine staggered, clutching Elizabeth's arm around the perimeter of the room, still dressed in the breeches and shirt Elizabeth had provided. The breeches felt easier on her spine, less weight about her shoulders. Perhaps this was another way society held women captive. Man is born free, but everywhere is in chains. And women too, for that matter. A glare of light caught Justine's eye, a vanity mirror on a desk. She pivoted. In the mirror's reflection, she observed what appeared to be an ugly male barely out of adolescence. His scalp was fuzzed with new growth over raised scars where a knife had scraped too close. Eyes a dull silvery hue, like those belonging to a corpse. A face bruised and wounded with swollen lips. A drip of dried blood beneath the nose. Yet the face she saw still resembled herself, which made the mirror's reflection all the more disturbing. She recognized her wide cheekbones and rounded jawline, which remained soft as a baby's, her right shoulder still higher than the other. Though Justine suspected she'd find herself changed after her resurrection, she hadn't expected to become an aberration. She didn't look normal, nor did she look fully human. She was washed out as water, twisted as a tree. And her voice, would it ever return? Or would she spend the rest of her life unable to communicate save through gestures and blinks? Monster. That's what I've become. She must have revealed some sign of distress, for Elizabeth helped her back into bed. She refused to leave it for the remainder of the day. Late that night, Elizabeth wrote a letter, which Justine found face up on the desk the following morning. My darling, I am writing to let you know I have arrived safely at the Villa Lavenza with Justine. I am truly sorry to have abandoned you in such an unexpected manner. Ultimately, I decided this task needed to be mine alone. It was too much to expect you to take it on. I understand my decision must have distressed your heart. I can offer no other apology save that grief is its own master. You recall how my family's graveyard is set at the edge of the villa. Justine's funeral, such as it was attended by only myself, Signora Giulia, Martin, and a young man who has joined the household. He is a mute boy Signora Giulia has taken in out of pity. Signora Giulia read the prayers, since she shares Justine's faith. As to our marriage, this will need to wait until my return to Geneva. I beg you not to follow me here, but to trust in my devotion. In the meantime, I must ask you not to divulge our intent to elope to your father or anyone else. Know that I think of you in every corner of this villa. I kiss your beloved face 1,000 times. Your loving Beata. A soft snore rose from the bed, where Elizabeth still slept. Justine raised her head from the letter which she'd strained to read. It was so early in the morning that there was barely any light. Several of Elizabeth's words were blurred from tears, or so Justine presumed. She shouldn't have read the letter, but she'd been unable to resist. Justine turned away from the letter, newly aware of how much Elizabeth had sacrificed on her behalf. Elizabeth had planned to elope with Victor, but postponed their union to save Justine's life. Elizabeth was the loyal friend she'd always wanted. Anything you need of me, I shall do for you. She'd be as devoted to Elizabeth as she'd been to Caroline. This wasn't the last Justine heard of Victor. Several mornings later, she was awakened by a knock on the door. A letter had arrived for Elizabeth. She watched Elizabeth scan the pages. From Henry, Elizabeth explained, her voice shaky. All's well. Though Justine couldn't make out the letter's contents, she understood enough. Henry had written on behalf of Victor, who was too distressed by Elizabeth's departure to communicate directly. Afterward, Elizabeth tucked away the pages and wiped her eyes. For the remainder of the day, her face appeared a constellation of sorrow. Days passed. Weeks. Soon an entire month had elapsed inside Elizabeth's bedroom in the Villa Lavenza. Justine saw no one except Elizabeth. The servants kept their distance. So did the hound, who appeared to come and go as he pleased. Justine rarely stirred from the bed, nor was she able to speak. Some days she found the strength to walk, though never beyond the perimeters of the room. Her legs remained unsteady. Outside her shuttered windows she heard birds, animals. She imagined worlds she could not see. A temperate July had given way to a torpid August, and it had grown hot as hell in that room. But Justine wasn't in hell. Limbo, she decided, reverting to the teachings of her church. Elizabeth spooned broth into Justine's soft, pale mouth as though she was a baby bird. In another week, Justine progressed from broth to bread soaked in milk and stewed fish. As she ate, she recalled William, how they'd fed him such food when he was a baby. Her eyes would sting at the memory before she'd give way to sleep. During this twilight time of lost days and nights, she sometimes woke to discover Elizabeth weeping at the foot of the bed, Caroline's emerald ring cupped in her palms. Victor. She misses him. Victor had not responded to Elizabeth's lovelorn letter, save for that one time through Henry. They'll reconcile when she returns, Justine reassured herself. They're fated for each other. Then, I wish there was something I could do. Finally, a day arrived when Justine felt strong enough to hold a pen herself. It was a clear August day, too. The heat had broken, and the roses clustered below the window were sultry with fragrance, their colours so saturated she thought she'd faint. Life felt like a voluptuous beast she'd never noticed. Everything that had occurred with Ernest seemed prelude to this moment. Food tasted sharper, water colder, her skin sensitive to every breeze and drip of sweat. I'm alive. Then Justine knew what she must do. She gestured toward Elizabeth's desk. After a moment's confusion, Elizabeth brought a tray bearing ink, pen, and paper to Justine's lap. Thank you, Justine wrote in a weak hand. Too weary to hold the pen any longer, she let it drop to the tray. Chapter 6. She indeed veiled her grief and strove to act the comforter to us all. She looked steadily on life and assumed its duties with courage and zeal. She devoted herself to those whom she had been taught to call her uncle. When Justine next awakened, she found Elizabeth seated in an armchair near the window, reading a letter. The window shutters were open. The sun was high. Outside, an oriole dashed from branch to branch of an olive tree, its song trilling and looping. Justine's lips curved with relief. Victor, he's finally written her. She raised herself against the pillow. At last, Elizabeth looked up from the letter. Her brow was creased, mouth tight. Something had happened. Something bad. My uncle, Elizabeth explained, folding the pages away. Victor writes he's had a collapse. His heart. Will he improve? Justine wrote. Elizabeth had left paper and pen on the bedstand. It's uncertain. Elizabeth began to pace before the window, twisting the emerald ring on her finger. The doctors believe he should make a full recovery, but who knows? My uncle is 74. I can't imagine Victor would have written unless it was serious. A catch in her voice. If I'd been there, I would have noticed before he took ill. I would have intervened. Did Victor state this in his letter? Elizabeth settled beside Justine. Not directly, but I know my uncle well. Victor wrote he's been fighting with Ernest. Justine's stomach dropped. Elizabeth hadn't mentioned Ernest since their arrival. Had Alphonse discovered Ernest's involvement with Justine? Elizabeth continued, her voice uneven. Ernest's been nagging my uncle to let him join the military. They've been at odds for months. If I'd been there, I'd have smoothed things over. Justine grasped Elizabeth's hand. I'm sure it didn't help that I ran off here, along with William's death. A deep breath. My uncle expected Victor and I to wed this fall. It was his only hope. And I kept you apart, Justine thought. Forgive me, my friend. The two sat in silence for some moments, clutching each other's hand. Elizabeth's was cool and soft. Justine patted it every so often. Justine stared out the window at the oriole, which had been joined by a starling on the olive tree branch. As the birds chittered, she was reminded of the sacrifices Elizabeth made to save her life. Justine hadn't thought beyond the miracle of her resurrection. She felt selfish for assuming Elizabeth would remain indefinitely in this villa with her, so far from the world. The wind shifted. The oriole flew off, a blur in the air, leaving the starling alone on the olive tree. Justine picked up the pen anew. "You must return to Geneva." "No," Elizabeth replied. "You're not ready to leave." "I can stay here alone without your help." "But you're still so vulnerable, so weak." Justine wrote, "I'm stronger than you know." She'd have to be. That afternoon, the 5 occupants of the Villa Lavenza were reduced to 3, for Elizabeth decided to send Signora Julia and Martin on a fool's errand to Bellerive. Best to leave only one servant behind with Justine in the villa, Elizabeth decided. Safer. Justine overheard Elizabeth tell the couple, "I can trust no one but you to ready the maison de campagne for my family's return. Ella can take care of us until my departure." "Ella's but a child," Signora Julia protested, displeased to be thrust from her home. She calmed once Elizabeth offered a sack of coins that far exceeded what was necessary for the journey. Once the pair departed, Elizabeth returned to the bedroom, where Justine rested on a chaise. "I found clothes for you in the attic," Elizabeth announced. "Male clothes. Safer to remain disguised, I think, though there are a few gowns." Elizabeth dragged a large steamer trunk in from the hallway. The clothes inside the trunk were embroidered and dyed in pastel hues, like something a young duke would have worn in an earlier era. An era without revolution and bloodshed. Silks, damasks, velvets, frock coats, waistcoats, stockings, gloves. They must have belonged to Elizabeth's parents years ago. "I'll leave you with sufficient funds, Justine. You'll possess enough to make a new life once you're strong enough to travel. Hopefully your voice will return soon." Elizabeth's brow clouded. "I would not recommend remaining beyond the end of the year. My uncle's health permitting, I may return then with my husband." Justine wrote, "You'll wed Victor then." Elizabeth avoided her gaze. "Ella will take care of you in my absence. When you leave here, go wherever you see fit, but I do not recommend travelling near Geneva. Do not tell me your destination. Do not tell Ella either. It's safer if no one knows where you've gone." "We shall never see each other again." Elizabeth ignored Justine's written words. "I don't think anyone will come here. However, if someone arrives asking questions, you should flee without delay. I'll draw a map of the grounds so you know where the paths lead, but it's best you view them." Elizabeth handed Justine a clean set of breeches and linens from the trunk. "Do you think you're strong enough to walk outside?" "If I lean against you." The clothes would be difficult to don without a servant's assistance. Justine assured Elizabeth she'd manage. To complete her transformation, Justine wrapped bandages around her breasts, pressing them tight against her chest until they ached. Months after her visit to Chêne, her breasts remained swollen, like they still mourned the child they'd never nourish. Outside the villa, Justine hung on Elizabeth's arm. They passed the duck pond toward the apple orchard, the dog lingering at their heels. Again, all of life appeared rude and brash, the rise of cicadas, the caw of crows, the steel-bright sun. Justine's legs felt wobbly as a new colt, but she didn't dare turn back. She inhaled the summer air, fecund, floral, delectable. Elizabeth pointed from the apple orchard toward the woods. "Here the path goes up into the mountains, where there's a soldier's encampment. If you continue on, it'll take you into Lombardy. Do you understand?" There was an edge of anxiety to Elizabeth's voice, Justine decided. Fear. She doesn't want to leave me, but she must. Justine blinked once. "I can do this," she mouthed. "You're still so weak, Justine, and you've still no voice." Elizabeth's jaw squared. "I should remain here. I'll find a way." 2 furious blinks. "No, you must go." Elizabeth shook her head. "If anything were to happen to you—" "I've survived death. I'll survive this. But you're still an invalid, a mute. Justine shrugged. I'm stronger than you think. Very well. Elizabeth pointed down toward the lake. This path goes to Leno, where you can hire a carriage. There's also a diligence coach to Milan, but that's a risk. Best to keep to yourself as long as you can. If you're able, we'll walk a little further. As they hiked deeper into the mountains, the path thinned as the woods thickened with oak and spruce. Justine's spine began to ache. Between imprisonment and illness, she hadn't walked so far in months, but she ignored her discomfort. Again, everything was so bright and sharp, overwhelming, luscious. The odor of wood smoke from a distance, manure, the cacophony of bird calls. A raven, she recognized its disconsolate cry. A rise of pine needles, its acidic scent rising in welcome. Suddenly the beauty of the day soured. The dog growled as a nut-brown hare dashed across their path. The hare was followed in close pursuit by a ruddy-furred fox whose teeth glinted bright. Just as it appeared the hare would lose the race, it dove into the undergrowth, leaving the fox without its prey. The dog went wild barking, only calming when Elizabeth threw a stick to fetch. Justine let out a breath, overcome by memory. The hare escaped, unlike William. All of Justine's feigned confidence drained away. Poor, sweet William. What had been his last moments? Had he been taken unaware? Her fingers brushed the bruises on her neck, which remained tender though it had been weeks since the hanging. She'd survived. He hadn't. How could such evil live in this world? She couldn't go on. She sank down on the path, her eyes burning. Elizabeth offered a hand. This was too much for you. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have suggested it. I'll find a way to stay with you. Another week. I'll write Victor. It's not that, Justine mouthed, clutching her heart. William. Elizabeth settled beside Justine, the pine needles beneath them soft and fragrant. She clasped Justine's hand. They sat there beneath the pines for some moments, lost in their shared grief. A day later, Ella was alone in the kitchen, her skinny legs dangling from a stool as she attacked a plate of sausage, while Elizabeth and Justine remained upstairs in the bedroom. Even with windows open, it bore the sick-room odor of sweat and camphor. Ella will take care of you, Elizabeth reassured as she buckled her valise. She'll cook, attend to your needs. I've paid her very generously to be loyal. She won't gossip. You won't tell anyone that I'm alive? Justine mouthed. Never. I give you my most solemn promise. Elizabeth offered Justine a map, a compass, and a bag of coins. Keep this safe. A moment later. Here. Take this, too. Elizabeth pressed into Justine's palm the necklace containing the locket portrait of Caroline, the one that led to her arrest. Justine shivered. No, you must. I'm convinced my aunt protected you from death. That's why you had the locket after William's murder. Justine didn't agree. After all, the murderer had stolen the locket from William in the first place. But then there was no more time for discussion. A team of horses whinnied in the courtyard below. The carriage, it's here. Elizabeth offered Justine a last embrace. Adieu, my friend. I pray we shall meet again one day. Until then, may God protect you. And then the three at the Villa Lavenza became only two. 2 girls in a mansion too grand for a dozen. One girl was a soft-cheeked maid barely out of childhood. The other appeared to be a gentleman invalid. Yet, for all of Ella's company, Justine had never felt so alone. Chapter 7. I, who had ever been surrounded by amiable companions, continually engaged in endeavoring to bestow mutual pleasure, I was now alone. By the time Elizabeth had been gone 2 weeks, Justine understood without a shadow of a doubt that Ella resented her. During the first days of Justine's quarantine after Elizabeth's departure, Justine had remained too weak to venture forth much from her room. Accordingly, Justine found herself dependent on Ella for survival while holding her at arm's length. What if the maid were to discover Justine wasn't a gentleman? She snubbed Ella's attempts at friendship, leaving the girl lonely. After all, the girl was scarcely grown herself, with coltish limbs and slender hips. She still wore her ebony hair down in plaits like a child. Justine refused to bathe in the kitchen, causing Ella to haul buckets of water up flights of stairs. At night, Justine locked her door lest she be accosted unaware. When she menstruated, she hid her rags in the bottom drawer of a cabinet, praying Ella wouldn't find them. Frustrated by Justine's cold affect, Ella stopped cleaning and allowed the clocks to wind down. In this way, time was lost, but it was not mourned. Justine grew to hate the villa nearly as much as she had her mother's house. She'd survived death only to find herself trapped anew. The situation wasn't helped in that Justine's voice hadn't returned. Not that it mattered. Ella spoke only Italian, and Justine only French. The hours passed slowly. There were books, but all were in Italian save for one translation in French, Mallory's Le Mort d'Arthur. It was a different binding than the one she recalled in Henry's collection. As for the view from the windows, the mountains and waters of Lake Como were uncommonly beautiful, but beauty was not enough to fill long hours and an empty heart. Soon Ella appeared only at meals to serve Justine. Their days became cleaved in two. In the morning, Ella would attend to Justine's breakfast, the dog clomping by her side. She'd reappear at twilight to serve dinner. During the few occasions Justine ventured downstairs, she discovered Ella napping on the settee in the morning room or eating sausages and bread in the kitchen. Her appetite appeared limitless. Other times she was nowhere to be found. Justine dared not scold. The arrangement felt a compromise. Ella fulfilled the minimum of her duties. Justine gained privacy to walk about her room with her breasts free of their bindings and to try to exercise her voice. Her body grew stronger. However, her voice remained as frozen as it had been since her hanging. But once September arrived and the leaves began to turn, Justine's curiosity expanded. What exactly did Ella do all day when she disappeared? Had she family? Friends? She appeared too young for a sweetheart, but who knew? Everyone has someone but me, Justine fretted. The prudent thing to do would be to leave the Villa Lavenza, using Elizabeth's funds to find her way to a new life before winter arrived. She found she couldn't. Not yet. The world felt too wide, too threatening. Nor could she envision the form this new life would take. And then one day, Ella did not appear. Justine had come downstairs looking for breakfast. Usually, Ella brought a tray at 8. The dog approached, sniffing her feet. She offered him a pat, fondling his soft, warm ears. He barked in answer. She wagered he hadn't been fed either. "Where's Ella? What do you know that I don't?" The dog barked again, leaping as he wagged his tail. He trotted away. Justine followed him from room to room, confirming what she feared. Ella had left for good. Not even her apron remained, which she hung on a hook in the hallway after she finished for the day. Finally, the dog led Justine to the kitchen, whimpering for food. Well, if there was one thing Justine knew, it was how to be a servant. She'd be mistress and servant now. First things first, lunch. Her stomach was a crater. Justine unlocked the kitchen pantry. No sausages, no root vegetables, no bread. A scant orange puddle in the sink revealed the last of the parsnip soup from the previous evening's dinner. Of course, Ella, in her voracious hunger, had taken it all. "I'll starve if I don't leave here." Her stomach growled as she readied to leave the villa, the dog following in her wake. She gathered her belongings, aiming to head for Leno, where at least food could be obtained. From there, she'd decide where to go. As Justine climbed the path toward the mountains, She was relieved to find her muscles stronger than expected. Oak leaves blanketed the forest floor in brilliant red, reminding Justine of a ruby necklace that once belonged to Caroline. Spiderwebs glistened with moisture. Birds sang, their trills rolling into the air. The sun slanted gold through the cypresses. As lovely as it all appeared, a foreboding tore at Justine as tangible as her hunger. It went beyond her nerves at being alone outside the villa since Elizabeth's departure, or not knowing where Ella had gone. The dog must have sensed Justine's unease, for he growled. A second later, a ruddy-hued fox dashed across her path, its eyes bright and startled, and, Justine decided, fearful. The dog ran off after it, barking all the while. Justine's neck prickled. Several feet ahead, she caught sight of Ella's bare shoulder peeking from behind a poplar. She was seated against its thick trunk, her back to Justine. The maid's dark hair gleamed amber in the afternoon sun. Napping, as usual. Justine's apprehension shifted to irritation. She should turn around, avoid confrontation, continue on to Leno before night fell. Even if Ella returned to the villa, it was only a matter of time before she'd abandon it again. Hadn't today proven as much? Anyway, the maid appeared sound asleep. The dog returned just as a second fox dashed across the path, scarlet leaves rustling. This fox appeared larger. A male. He stood at attention, his nose stretched toward the hound. The dog went mad with barking. Ella didn't move. Justine's steps slowed. A branch cracked beneath her heel. A raven fluttered and landed on Ella's shoulder. She remained still. The dog ignored the fox and ran toward Ella. Still, Ella did not respond. "Oh, sweet Jesus," Justine breathed. She rushed toward Ella. The raven swooped into the sky. Something was wrong, something terrible. "Don't let it be. Don't let it be." It was. Whoever or whatever had assaulted Ella had left her propped against the poplar trunk like an abandoned book. Her deep brown eyes stared out, unseeing. Her head was tucked against her chest, shadowed by her curls, which had been freed from its plaits. A small grey rabbit sat in the hollow of her lap, nibbling at her curled fingers. Perhaps it had been chased there by the foxes. At the dog's approach, the rabbit scuttled into the undergrowth. Justine fell to her knees, shaking Ella's shoulders. "Wake up, for the love of God!" Ella's head flopped against her shoulder. Florid bruises circled her throat. At last, Justine's voice returned. She screamed. Once Justine regained control of her emotions, she took it upon herself to drag Ella's body to the villa, where she'd bury her in the graveyard out back. It was better than leaving her to rot in the woods, where someone might come on her, or worse, the dog find her remains of interest. Where had the dog gone, anyway? He hadn't returned since she'd screamed. Was Justine capable of digging a grave? She'd find out. After all, she'd been the grave digger's daughter. She looped her elbows beneath Ella's armpits and pulled. Dragging her corpse through the forest was slow, awkward work. Justine had to stop several times, panting for air, listening for anyone approaching. Strangely, she possessed no fear of someone accusing her of the murder. Ella's skirts tangled about her limbs, snagging on roots and catching rocks. Tearing and shredding. Justine felt a deep sorrow rise, one that felt unending. What sort of monster would do this? Could it have been soldiers from the encampment in the mountains? Or someone else? The consideration made Justine's stomach churn until she thought she'd vomit. A burst of laughter. The laughter seemed distant, but sound traveled strangely in the mountains. Justine glanced down at her bound breasts, her small form, her trousers. Even if she appeared male, that didn't matter either. Her nerves sang. I must hurry. Several more steps. How heavy Ella was for someone so lanky. The sun dipped behind the Alps. Shadows turned cool, blue. Night would soon fall. No time to lose. Justine settled Ella beneath a copse of ferns. She quickly arranged the girl as though asleep, as she'd witnessed her father do when he'd bury someone. She draped Ella's arms across her breasts, closed her eyelids. She muttered a brisk pater noster over the girl's body and crossed herself. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Amen. Finally, she twined ivy over Ella's limbs until it appeared as though nature herself had embraced the girl as its child. I'm sorry, Ella, Justine whispered, her heart pounding. I wish I'd been kinder to you. Maybe you wouldn't have run off then. Her tears began to flow. I'm so sorry. Very sorry. Justine collapsed to the forest floor, sobbing in earnest. She should flee, but to leave Ella felt an abandonment. Everyone surrounding me is cursed. First Caroline, then William, and now Ella, even her mother and siblings. She prayed Elizabeth was safe. Now I am truly alone. Suddenly something rustled in the trees. Justine rose to her feet, prepared to flee. Soldiers? Or another monster? No, the fox and his mate. They'd escaped the dog, wherever he'd gone. The foxes crept out of their den as the wind picked up, howling as it scattered scarlet-hued leaves across Ella's corpse. They resembled daubs of blood. Another hoot of laughter, closer now. I must go, Ella, she whimpered. Forgive me. Justine stole a last glance behind. Ella resembled a long-lost princess, one who might awaken one day. The male fox settled beside Ella's shoulder, his muscles tensed. He cocked his head toward Justine, as though to say, What are you waiting for? Justine ran.